when the staff was discussing this Lenten season and what we wanted to focus on, the conversation went to hearing from members of the congregation, their own stories of real life and real faith. And when I heard that conversation, my mind went to Dan, who has been through a journey of life and faith, of ups and downs, of struggles and joys. Dan, I'm so pleased that you consented and said you would talk.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Salem. This is my story. It all began about the middle of May 2012. Remember that spring? We had that warm spring. We were golfing at Cuyuna on March 23rd. And it was my privilege to go out there with my golfing buddies 2 or 3 times a week and play golf. Middle of May, I was out there, and if you've been to Cuyuna, you know it's a very hilly course. There are a lot of steep inclines going from one green to the next tee or from one tee to the next green. And on the front 9, I started having a little pressure, a sort of heaviness in my chest. Well, I'm a doctor. I'm smart, right? I know what that is. So, 3 weeks later, I scheduled a stress test. And I flunked my stress test. And so, they had me go see a cardiologist that same day. And he looked at my stress test and he said, "You've got to go down to Abbott and have an angiogram." He said, "I think you've got a left main artery occlusion that they can correct with 1 stent." And I thought, well, okay. I said, "I'm going to go to Bemidji this afternoon because I've got a golf game with my buddies in Bemidji." And he said, "No, I don't think so. I think you better go today." And I said, "No, I'll go Friday." So I left, and I'm on 371 North going towards Bemidji with my wife Shirley, and my phone rings. He said, "You got to turn around and go to Abbott now." And I said, "Why?" I said, "I'm going Friday." "No, you got to go now." He said, "There's been a slight elevation of one of your cardiac enzymes," meaning I probably had a little bump, a little heart attack. He said, "I'm admitting you tonight. If you were in any emergency room in this state, they would admit you and then transfer you." So I think to myself, oh, isn't it ironic? Everybody else gets a helicopter ride. I have to drive myself. So anyway, they did the angiogram the next day, and they said, "No, you're not a candidate for a stent. You need at least a triple bypass." Well, my mother had a triple bypass, and she did fine, lived another 18 years. And my brother, who's 10 years older than I, is still doing well 10 years later from his bypass. So I thought, well, go ahead and do the triple bypass. Well, it didn't go so well. For whatever reason, those grafts plugged me up, and I had a terrible heart attack. And I went into cardiogenic shock, meaning I didn't have enough blood pressure to sustain me. And my lungs started to fill up, and my kidneys began to shut down. So if I could have that first slide. Oh, that's the wrong one, but I'll go back. Here it is. So in that first 24 hours of my cardiogenic shock, they did on me what is called an ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It's kind of a heart-lung bypass machine whereby they tap into an artery and a vein and they oxygenate that blood through a membrane and take the load off of the lungs. And it kind of looks like this. And that awful looking picture is actually some lines that are coming out of the groin on one leg or the other. And they're diverting blood from the artery into the vein, or from the vein into the artery, delivering oxygen to it, and then back to the heart. And this is another picture, and you can see the, let's see, this is the machinery that oxygenates the blood, and these are the two tubes that are coming out. Well, that machine saved my life. It was kind of a bridge that gave me a chance. And they kept it going like that for 1 week. But ultimately they had a meeting with my wife and my son and family, and they said, this isn't going to work long term, because he can't go home like that. And so they suggested that I have an LVAD. And an LVAD is a left ventricular assist device, whereby they put a pump implanted into my chest. And so, under all of this, this is not all muscle. Under this is my vest that carries my batteries and my controller that powers my pump. And it sort of looks like this. And what you see here is, that's the pump, and that's where it's tapped into the heart, and then it delivers blood into the aorta. And it delivers blood at about a rate of 450 cc's per minute. And that pump is a rotary pump that spins at 8,800 RPM. So there's a whole lot going on that you can't hear it. I can hear it when it's quiet at night, and it's just kind of a zoom, 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 zoom hum. And anyway, when I found out a couple of weeks later that I had this pump, I wasn't real happy, because I thought, well, that means I'm going to be stuck to a machine. I'll be tethered to a machine, and I won't be able to do anything. I won't be able to play golf. I won't be able to do my yard work. I won't be able to work. And my son said, no, Dad, all those things are going to be available to you. You just have to work at getting well. And it worked. So, a week later, they took out my endotracheal tube and did a tracheotomy on me, because the endotracheal tube had been in 2 weeks. And during the time that I was so sick, I had wonderful and amazing and fantastic dreams. I dreamt that I took my family to Damascus. And we ate at a restaurant there, had a great big platter of mussels. It cost me $200. And I also dreamt that I was in Belarus. I don't know where Belarus came from, but I was talking to a young lady, and we were going to exchange hockey jerseys. I was going to get her U.S. America hockey jersey and for the Olympics, and she was going to send me a Belarus hockey jersey. Anyway, it was strange. With some of the dreams, were quite amazing. And people have asked me, when you were that sick, did you ever, get to the other side, or get to that lighted room, or see God? I said, not really, but a couple of those dreams stand out. And one of them was, I just caught a glimpse of my mother and father, who have been dead for several years. And they were sitting like they were waiting. And it kind of reminded me of how we used to go on train trips together, because my father was a railroad man. And it was like they were sitting in a depot waiting for the train to come, or maybe they were waiting for me. I don't know. But we never spoke. It was very short-lived, gone. And the other dream that I think stands out was I was given a pass from the hospital by the surgeon, and the pass was to go and meet my family. Well, I got on a shuttle bus, and it took me to what looked like a resort. And you've seen the resorts where they have patios side by side by side by side, all on the walkway level. And in each of those patios, there were, I think they were either my granddaughters or angels. They were all, they were all dressed in bright yellow dresses with little pink and blue flowers embroidered onto the dress. And they had parasols that matched, and they were spinning their parasols. And I think it was either Shirley or the grandma angel walking down the walkway toward me. And we never got to touch. I never got to hold them. And then it was over, and they were calling me to get back on the bus, to go back to the hospital. And during this dream, there was a background of music. Mine eyes have seen the glory. Excuse me. So that was, I think, a significant dream. After they were allowed to wake me up, I had fluid that was still built up on my lungs. I looked kind of like the Pillsbury Doughboy. I was puffy everywhere. Even my toes looked like marshmallows. I went from a normal weight of 155 to 190 pounds. All fluid that had accumulated because of my kidney failure, my heart failure, and my lung failure. But I was coughing and coughing and coughing. And I would get into these coughing spasms, and then the nurse would come in, and they would take a suction tube and put it down my trach and really make me cough. And then I would clear up for a little while. And during that time, I did quite a bit of praying on my own. I would say, Father, forgive me, for I have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed, by things I have done, by things I have left undone. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of all things. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And I would go through this repetitiously, over and over and over again, until I finally got to sleep. During the time I was so sick, there were a lot of prayers going up for me, I'm telling you. There were over 25,000 responses on my Carrying Bridge. Of course, I was in the hospital for 7 weeks. No wonder Medicare's going broke. My daughter-in-law called her friend Marcy, and she said, Grandpa's had a terrible heart attack. He's in shock. They don't know if he's going to make it. And Marcy got on the phone, and she called friends, and friends called friends, and they had a prayer vigil for me over in Crosby at St. Joseph's. So when you get that many Catholics praying for you, you ought to do all right. So, I certainly appreciate all of the prayers and the good wishes that came out of this church on our behalf. I told Shirley she should be the one giving this talk because she was awake throughout this whole thing. I slept through most of it. It took a long time for me to get my strength back because I was down in bed for so long that when they finally allowed me to get up, I couldn't walk, I couldn't bear weight, I couldn't move. I was so weak. But it came back, it really did. It came back to the point where I can do everything I want to do now. I'm so grateful for that. One day, early in my recovery, I was kind of sitting on the pity pot, you might say, thinking, well, this isn't so good. I was watching TV, and they showed a story of a young girl. She was a dancer. She was beautiful, and she was rehearsing on a stage in a big theater, and somehow she stepped back and fell into the orchestra pit, and she broke her neck, and she became quadriplegic. She could not only no longer dance, she couldn't even walk, and requires now attendance and assistance in every aspect of her daily life. But she decided not to focus on what she had lost, but on what she had left. And she had a brain, and she had faith, and she wrote books. And I thought, wow, if that girl can do that, look what I got left. Look what I can do, So, I guess count your blessings. If there's anything that I can bring to this, it's count your blessings. Count not on what you've lost, but what you've got left. I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe in miracles. Thank you.